there's this video of this guy called Chuck who's basically going down a wave that looks like the size of the fucking Shard in London, and he's going down it. But it's like there's so many lessons for challenger brands. It's leaning into fear. It's the bumpy journey. It's the holding on by the kind of holding onto your seatbelt kind of thing. But I'd love to know, and we're going to use this as a lens to explore creativity and audacity. But I think to start, I'd love to know, and I think you'd said that you'd surfed in 30 different countries from Israel to West Samoa. What's been the best wave of your life? And could you paint a picture of what that felt like? Describe that feeling.
It's pretty tricky to sort of pick one. I mean, I've got moments from different places. I mean, probably most recently, not last Christmas, the one before, we did a road trip from here to Morocco, and I surfed on my own during Christmas. It would have been better with mates and with some people, to be honest. But I was kind of stuck on my own out there at a pretty famous wave, and it's one of the longest waves in the world, and it breaks for about a kilometer, maybe a bit longer. And I just couldn't believe that I was just out there on my own, no one around. Maybe because of the time of year, I'm guessing. But that was 3 days just sat out there. I'd come back, see my family and my kid. I'd be like, yeah, that was amazing. I scored. And they're like, they don't care. But they're like, where are we going to go for lunch? But yeah, I mean, that's probably that definitely stands out as a recent trip. But also over here in Portugal where I live, it was one of the main reasons why I moved out here. The waves are amazing. There's lots of different places where you can go, whether it's sort of beach breaks for learning or some heavier beach breaks through to reefs and points. And it's got a bit of a mixture. And the waves in Nazaré, people think that I don't surf them. I'm rubbish, right? I'm not going out in any of that big stuff. But out there, it's kind of, it breaks pretty consistently at a large size. So you can go and watch it, and it sort of the season starts in November until about March. And that's just wild to see that size of just the power kind of behind it all, and witness it right on top of the cliff top. So here, Morocco, probably are the ones that kind of stand out most recently.
I think the point you said there about, and I think it does relate to the founder's journey, is when you're out there on your own, because I think a lot of founders who listen to this podcast, there's something inherent about having to be the one out there on your ones. Ultimately, when all is said and done, it can be quite a lonely journey. So I think there's definitely parallels there. In terms of I think that another common theme is this leaning into fear. And I think there's definitely, whether you're a brand starting out, whether it's catching a wave or going to a Tesco buyers meeting, there's an element of leaning into fear. Talk to me about how you process fear as you're going into a scary wave or a scary situation, and then, because I think that could be really helpful for listeners when you've got to face fear in any facet of life.
I think it's just, it's kind of doing it incrementally and building up. No one kind of goes into it and go, oh, okay, I'm going to surf a 15, 20 foot wave tomorrow, if you haven't started off, on half a foot or 1 foot and kind of learn and progress and build up. It's almost to give you an example, when I was a kid, I had a pretty bad stutter. I'm dyslexic. I hated reading out in class. I'm lousy at public speaking. So when COVID kind of kicked things off, and I was like, okay, well, I've got to do, my business is sort of taking a bit of a nosedive. I've got to do something. And I started doing a live podcast, and it absolutely petrified me to do something recorded live where, anything could happen. And you do it again and again and again. It's just repetition and practicing. And it's the same as kind of, like you said, getting in front of a buyer, going to a buyer's meeting or something, and just doing something that scares you enough when it just, then it just becomes less scary. and you thought like now, like I love it, and it's sort of like if I do public speaking, it kind of I get a kick out of it, but that would have been way scarier than dropping in on a wave for me.